Step 8 says we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. It wasn't until I started working the 12-step recovery program that I learned the difference between just saying I'm sorry and making an amend. Some definitions offered by the dictionary include to make better, to rectify, set straight, or make right, or to make reparation. By working this program, I began to see that my difficulty with interpersonal relationships was a major contributing factor to my unhappiness. The more I read the AA Big Book, the more it struck me just how much of that book is devoted to understanding and improving relationships with other people. It also made clear that I cannot change people, but that I can change the way I treat and respond to other people. That's probably obvious to lots of people, but it was a new way of approaching relationships for me. I didn't feel so helpless in dealing with others, and I was able to give up the idea of changing other people to satisfy me. And that gave me hope, because I could see how this program was already beginning to change me. Now, you've been working on weeding out your character defects and shortcomings, which in turn will have a very positive impact on your relationships. And now, as you begin to list the people you have harmed and examine your mistakes, you have an opportunity to do something about it. But there's a big difference between saying you're sorry and actually making amends. Now, you've said you're sorry hundreds of times, and this time you're going to make a plan to set things right, along with resolve to avoid repeating that same behavior. With what you've learned in steps 1 through 7, you should be able to pick through the wreckage of your past without denial and with honesty. But the very idea that you may be asked to contact the people that you've harmed is frightening and embarrassing. You may even strongly question, why is this necessary? Remember that it's far less important for you to understand why the 12-step program works, and much more important to just accept the fact that it does work and follow instructions. It's true that there are obstacles you'll have to overcome in working steps 8 and 9. But right now, I want you to simply focus on what step 8 actually asks you to do, which is to make a list of the people that you think you may have harmed, even if it was mostly their fault. It's easy to build up a wall of justification around your thoughts, actions, and feelings regarding the harm done to you, but that's not going to help you at all in taking step 8. Just own your part of why things went awry. And then, after you've honestly done this, all the step asks you to do is be willing to make amends. You don't have to make the amends in step 8. All you have to do is have willingness to make the amends. You know, with the way you have hurt and disappointed people in your life, you're really lucky that anybody still wants to have a relationship with you. So I recommend you stop feeling so self-righteous and have an attitude of gratitude that you still have people who care about you. Some of those you place on your list may have broken off relationships with you. Also, some of the people you have harmed may not even be aware of how you've hurt them or mistreated them. And don't lie to yourself by saying that the only person you harmed with your alcohol, drugs, or addiction was yourself. What do you think is meant by the word harmed in step 8? The 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book says harm is the result of instincts in collision which cause physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual damage to people. Examples might include lying, cheating, bad temper, depriving others of material goods, emotional security, or peace of mind, or even self-centered sexual conduct. Is it any wonder why others begin to experience fear and resentment? You know, people can become vengeful and want to retaliate when they feel like you may be hurting them. And how was your conduct within your family? Did you try to dominate the whole family? Maybe you were stingy, irresponsible, or cold-hearted. Maybe you were often irritable and critical or impatient. Did you take everything too seriously Or did you wallow in depression and self-pity? I'll bet your friends and coworkers got a good dose of this behavior as well. I believe that when you make a deep and honest search of your motives and actions, you'll begin to see the unpleasant truth about why you had difficulty with so many people. And it's not about them, it's about you. Yes, this is about being sensitive to the emotional harm that you've caused others. But it may be even more important for you to explore the emotional harm you've done to yourself. These unresolved conflicts can smolder for years underneath the surface and have ongoing negative impact on your emotions and your current relationships with others. You have to discover exactly what personality traits you have that injured and disturbed others. To stay sober, you'll need to forgive others, ask God to forgive you, and then forgive yourself. When you ask God to forgive you, it's not to make you feel better, but to acknowledge that you've caused suffering to someone. Let me suggest a practical way of going about step 8. Make a list of all those you possibly harmed by your addictive behaviors. When you quiet your mind, memories of those things that you've done to others begin to emerge from the shadows. Write down the effect it had on them as individuals and on your relationship. You must get past any thoughts that the other person deserved what you said or did. When the words and actions of other people dictate your choices, you are not free. Examine your motivation in what you said or did. Was it fear, resentment, anger, jealousy, lust, or greed? Call to mind an image of that person and imagine how she or he must have felt when you wounded them. It's important to understand that you have to take responsibility for your own thoughts and actions and begin to feel regret that you've caused suffering for others, even if you thought they deserved it at the time. You must realize that when you harm others, you harm yourself. This is not the 12-step spiritual path. Remember how you used the power of confession in step 5? Well, it's time to get with your sponsor again now and discuss all the people on your list that you have harmed. Remember that it's better to cry and share it rather than grin and bear it. It wouldn't surprise me at all if there is someone on your list that you hold deep resentment towards. And because of this, your willingness to make amends may be little or none. Well, Ann Landers had a great quote. She said, "Hanging on to resentment is letting someone you despise live rent-free in your head." Well, the Big Book gives us a prescription to cure this. It suggests that you pray for that person every day, acknowledging any harm that you may have done. Now, here's the tough part. Ask God to shower His blessings on that person, just as you would ask the higher power to do for you. If you are unwilling to do that, you can at least start by simply asking for God's will for that person. If you do this for at least 2 weeks, you will probably find that you are developing some willingness to consider making amends. Just remember that you wouldn't have an amicable relationship with anyone in your life right now if they hadn't already forgiven you. So, you need forgiveness, just like the people you hold resentments toward. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you forget. It doesn't mean that you are letting that person off the hook for any wrongdoings. Forgiveness is not about condoning someone's hurtful actions. It's about releasing your negative emotions and perceptions about the painful events. It also doesn't mean that you deny your feelings concerning the transgression, but it does mean that you hope the strong negative feelings associated with the memory of that person or event begin to fade or disappear over time. Forgiveness is viewed as being primarily for the forgiver and is a process that requires both strength and courage. The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. One last thing about forgiveness. If you've been the victim of severe abuse in some way, seek help from a therapist, a psychiatrist, or minister. I'm talking about such things as sexual abuse, physical abuse, or emotional abuse. You can also discuss this with your sponsor, but I would listen to the advice of your medical professional or minister about how to try and reach some resolution and healing. The celebrated author Lewis B. Smedes put it this way: when we forgive evil, we do not excuse it, we do not tolerate it, we do not smother it. We look the evil full in the face, call it what it is, and let its horror shock and stun and enrage us, and only then do we forgive it. Taking step 8 means you are willing to let go of the life you had planned and be ready to accept the life that's waiting for you. It's the beginning of the end of your isolation from others and from God.